really curious because I didn't get to take Potter's Canadian politics class. Can you tell me about it?
Yeah, I think I chose that class because I mean it says Canadian, and I'm in Canada studying Canadian stuff. So I felt like it was a very good course for me to take. At the start of my journey into Max Bell, because my assumption was I was gonna have a lot of Canadian professors that are gonna use a lot of Canadian case studies, Canadian examples, and I feel like I needed that background of the Canadian system. So we got to learn about Canada's like special case in terms of like federalism, how they govern themselves. Special case studies as well. How did Canada deal with the COVID-19 pandemic? How is like Canada's relationship with the US? A lot of things that I really did not know. But I felt taking that course really like puts me on a great like foundation to proceed with Maxwell, and I find it very useful. How was it at Global?
Yeah, it's really interesting that you as an international student took Canadian and I as a Canadian student took global. I hadn't clocked that before.
Yeah.
Registration initially opened, I was in both classes because it was a really hard choice between global and Canadian. And the first day of class, I ended up going to global.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I was there for the first day for the introductions. And it's always a hard choice, I think, with a lot of our classes. So I ended up looking at the syllabus for Canadian and felt that it would fit better for what I wanted to focus on, more Canadian-based issues that also pull in some of the global issues.
I really liked the global policy class. I thought I got a lot out of it. It was kind of designed as a survey class where each week we had a very different topic about peace and security, refugees, populism, multipolarity, the UN. So it moved kind of all throughout the world system. I was excited by the fact that we had a lot of guest lecturers who came in as experts in the field rather than academics, people that worked for the UN, people that worked for the Canadian government, people that worked for like prominent NGOs. And I felt that I got a lot out of each week. So it felt good. And it was a good continuation of my undergrad because I did my undergrad in peace and conflict studies. And I felt that this was a master's level course continuing all of that.
Yeah. I think I see that yours was more like externally based. I was like more focused. I mean, I wish I could do global as well, but I feel like considering the 1 year I have here to spend at Maxwell, I would benefit more from a Canadian perspective so that I can have that foundation to build up. But I'll definitely reach out for some of your course materials maybe.
Absolutely.
I need stuff on global as well for my career and stuff.
I'll send you the syllabus. What did you think about the assignments they had to do in Canadian?
So it was quite special because taking Canadian was like, I think that was the very first course I took at Maxwell, and the approach was a bit different from what I was used to. But the readings, particularly, like we had a reading to submit every single week. So you have to like read, then submit a reading report. Then the questions or the things, your takeaways from the readings become the basis of the discussion. So I found that the class was very interactive. It was mostly like student led. I think that's like a style of teaching that I really enjoyed about the Canadian class.
I like that a lot, that you actually had to do a reading report every week. Not because I would have enjoyed submitting them, because it meant that during class you'd have a really fulsome discussion. Global also had a lot of big class discussions. Sometimes we did smaller breakouts. But the assignment structure was different from that, because we had 2 short essays, a couple pages, and 2 group projects, and then a final exam. That was a take-home exam. So it was a good balance of individual application and collaborative work. What I found was really cool about it is that a lot of the assignments we were instructed to go just from the course content. So we had a collection of required readings and optional readings each week, and the instructor didn't want us to do a lot of outside research, which helped in an intense program to keep everything contained, allow yourself to get into optional readings that somebody else has selected for you for their relevance, for their level of analysis. So I thought that was a really good way to do it.
Yeah, and I think one aspect of it that I really enjoyed most was the course was structured on themes. So we have federalism, we have everything else that makes Canada, right? And then you just sort of pick out like what you have, like what you're more interested in, and then like you do a presentation on it. So I chose the week on indigenous peoples and reconciliation because I read that from the course that like most of the things that really came up, like the biggest issues with reconciliation had to be the land ownership and stuff. And I love land. I worked in the land sector before I came. I was like, okay, there's an opportunity for me to delve into like what went wrong. How is it that Canada's land sector is this way and then it's so different from Ghana? I really had a great time preparing and reading into, how Canada got here and then how Ghana dodged, never got to that point, and like maybe some best practices that we can learn from each other. And so those presentations were really fun, and listening to my colleagues actually like lead the class sessions were really nice. Changes how your perspective. My perspective about Canada is definitely different now, and I know you look at the global politics and everything a bit differently after taking that course.
Yeah, and I think that the professor did a really intentional job of situating multipolarity, so that we didn't just read thinkers from Canada, the States, and England, or even Canada, the States, and Europe. But we actually got a whole session on the role of Africa in governance in the 21st century, the rising role of China and India, South America, the different geopolitical conceptions. It was done with care so that we avoided that kind of 20th century mindset.
The Canadian class and the group that we had really liked to get into a lot of different issues. So we focused on, some of the historical aspects behind Canada's policies and Westminster parliamentary system, and focused on some of the more contemporary issues that kind of relate to global a bit. So we focused on national defense, we focused on immigration, a lot of kind of the hot topic issues that are in our society today. So it really created just really interesting discussion between people that had really, really different backgrounds, which I feel is the same with global. There was a lot of people that had different backgrounds in your global class as well, right?
Yeah, there was a really good mix of folks with a lot of different kind of backgrounds and experiences that they were able to bring that really enhanced the quality of our discussion. And so I initially was really attracted to taking this global class because it allows you to really understand what is the sort of international context in which your domestic decisions are being made, because I knew that I would have an opportunity with the other classes to kind of maybe focus more on Canada.
Sure.
And so this was an opportunity to broaden that scope. And you actually were able to join us for our last guest speaker.
Yeah, that was cool. So I think it was actually the last class, right, where our two classes came together because there was a kind of intersectionality with that guest speaker from the Prime Minister's office, which was actually kind of fun to merge the classes together, because since we had been separated for the first 6 weeks of the program. Yeah, I think that's the interesting thing about both classes is that whether you're more focused on Canada or global, you're going to get some of each in each of the different classes. Like you were talking about in the Canadian class, we were focused on national defense procurement, and Arctic sovereignty. So I actually did a seminar on that, which is one of my favorite parts of the class, is that each week after the first couple weeks, I think, we all had a topic and did a seminar for, half an hour or an hour to the class on what we had learned. So we talked about, someone did one on the Nunavut devolution agreement, which is very prevalent in the news and such today, and a new issue that has come about. Someone did one on immigration and multiculturalism. We talked about COVID-19. There were so many different subjects that we covered, but they can all kind of be transposed in the global sphere as well, right? So, meeting our NATO 2% budget, that has impacts around the globe to our NATO partners and abroad, but also has impacts to folks here in Canada. So I think that was the interesting part about both courses, is that whether or not you were more focused on global or Canadian context, you kind of had a mix of both in each of the courses. A nice thing about the two courses as well is that our cohort is 30 altogether, but we kind of got split up in between the global and Canadian class, so you had more opportunity for discussion, and it sounds like our group likes to have discussions a lot. We take up a lot of class time. We are a chatty bunch, but I think that we learn a lot from each other. That's the one good thing that I always am talking to people about the program, is that it is such a diverse background of people. People that have worked for the government, people that came right from undergrad, people who have worked in private industry.
Also, for some people who work for the UN.
The UN, yeah. There's so many different perspectives that I feel like every conversation we go into, we learn something, not only from the professors, but from our classmates. So I think the two courses really, since they're a little smaller, they gave you that time to really discuss, and especially since they were in 3-hour blocks. 2 times a week, there was a lot of time spent with each other, and we really get to learn a lot about each other's backgrounds, experiences, especially since it was that first 6 weeks of class too. Kind of helped us get closer together.
But I definitely still feel like it didn't, just because we were in two different groups doesn't mean that like I'm not also, I mean, we're friends and we were in different
we're here right now.
We're here right now. So it's like, even though the classes are separate and you're not like necessarily spending all your time together as a cohort, like you're saying, totally agree, gets you having different kinds of conversations with like all kinds of people, but doesn't mean that like you don't also build relationships with
sure.
Across the entire cohort. So
and that's where we get to, when we have those other two classes, I guess that was, we went like economics and the science class as well, everyone was kind of together, which is kind of fun time to come back together and talk to each other about what we're learning the two courses as well, what was intersecting, what was not. And it was always good kind of every day to hear about your folks' guest speaker to see who it was that week. It was always different and interesting.
Always curious to know.
Yeah.
You're like, what UN official came and spoke to you?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, let me tell you.
Yeah.